Wonder, Part 2, Chapters 13 through 16. And then, of course, today's date, which is October 29th, 2020. We're starting with number 6. It is actually our only word today. So Cullen, you only have one word to do tonight. And it is the word immerse. Immerse. I-M-M-E-R-S-E. Immerse. If you need to stand up for a second, you can. But if you cannot see, even if you stand up, then okay, you don't need to do all that. That's too much. You should, if you need to stand up, what?
I can't see out the word because you're ahead.
Okay, well then I will move. Okay, immerse. I-M-M-E-R-S-E. Even if you can't see the word, I do spell it out loud a couple times. So do you really need to see the whole word 100%? Or can you make sure that you're listening when I spell the word out loud? Exactly. So immerse. I-M-M-E-R-S-E. It is a verb, which means it is an action. Something that you do. And it means to let something hold all of your attention. So if you immerse yourself in something, that means you let it hold all of your attention. You don't pay attention to anything else. You immerse yourself into that thing, which means you let it hold all of your attention. Yes, Cullen.
Attention.
Attention is A-T-T-E-N-T-I-O-N. Yes.
It's like August was immersed to his video game. It was like August immersed to his video game.
Well, he was immersed in his video game. That's how you would use that.
Okay.
You are immersed in something. You are letting that thing take all of your attention. So yes, August was had immersed himself into his video games. He wasn't paying attention to anything else for that time when Via walked in the room. Good. Here's the word in context. Instead, she immerses herself in getting August's costume ready, since we all know Halloween is his favorite time of year. So, we'll see who immersed themselves in something. What did they immerse themselves in? What was happening? Why did they do this? That's our only word. Okay? Any questions about immerse? Now you might hear it in a different way. Like maybe in the past tense where it might have ed or just d at the end. Or in the present tense with ing. Or in the present tense with s. Please don't do that. I can tell that if you were doing that, you weren't listening to me. Because I can barely hear myself, so you definitely can't hear me. Okay, go ahead and close your vocab notebooks. Chapter 13, Out with the Old. Miranda and Ella blasted off. They attached themselves to a new crowd destined for high school glory. After a week of painful lunches where all they would do was talk about people that didn't interest me, I decided to make a clean break for it. They asked no questions. I told no lies. We just went our separate ways. I didn't even mind after a while. I stopped going to lunch for about a week, though, to make the transition easier, to avoid the fake, "Oh shoot, there's no room for you at the table, Olivia." It was easier to just go to the library and read. I finished War and Peace in October. It was amazing. People think it's such a hard read, but it's really just a soap opera with lots of characters, people falling in love, fighting for love, dying for love. I want to be in love like that someday. I want my husband to love me the way Prince Andrei loved Natasha. We're on page 107. I ended up hanging out with a girl named Eleanor, who I'd known from my days at PS22, though we'd gone to different middle schools. Eleanor had always been a really smart girl. A little bit of a crybaby back then, but nice. I'd never realized how funny she was. Not laugh out loud daddy funny, but full of great quips. And she never knew how lighthearted I could be. Eleanor, I guess, had always been under the impression that I was very serious. And, as it turns out, she'd never liked Miranda and Ella. She thought they were stuck up. I gained entry through Eleanor to the smart kids table at lunch. It was a larger group than I'd been accustomed to hanging out with, and a more diverse crowd. It included Eleanor's boyfriend, Kevin, who would definitely become class president someday, a few techie guys, girls like Eleanor who were members of the yearbook committee and the debate club, and a quiet guy named Justin who had small round glasses and played the violin, and who I had an instant crush on. Excuse me. When I'd see Miranda and Ella, who were now hanging out with the super popular set, we'd say, "Hey, what's up?" and move on. Occasionally, Miranda would ask me how August was doing and then say, "Tell him I said hello." This I never did. Not to spite Miranda, but because August was in his own world these days. There were times at home that we never crossed paths. Chapter 14, October 31st. We're on page 109. Grands had died the night before Halloween. Since then, even though it's been 4 years, this has always been a sad time of year for me. For Mom, too. Though she doesn't always say it. Instead, she immerses herself in getting August's costume ready, since we all know Halloween is his favorite time of year. This year was no different. August really wanted to be a Star Wars character called Boba Fett, so Mom looked for a Boba Fett costume in August's size, which, strangely enough, was out of stock everywhere. Oops, I wasn't using my finger and I lost my place. She went to every online store, found a few on eBay that were going for an outrageous amount, and finally ended up buying a Jango Fett costume that she then converted into a Boba Fett costume by painting it green. I would say, in all, she must have spent 2 weeks working on the stupid costume. And no, I won't mention the fact that Mom has never made any of my costumes, because it really has no bearing on anything at all. The morning of Halloween, I woke up thinking about Grands, which made me really sad and weepy. Dad kept telling me to hurry up and get dressed, which just stressed me out even more, and suddenly I started crying. I just wanted to stay home. So Dad took August to school that morning, and Mom said I could stay home, and the two of us cried together for a while. One thing I knew for sure, however much I missed Grams, Mom must have missed her more. All those times August was clinging to life after a surgery, all those rushed trips to the ER, Grands had always been there for Mom. It felt good to cry with Mom, for both of us. At some point, Mom had the idea of our watching The Ghost and Mrs. Muir together, which was one of our all-time favorite black and white movies. I agreed that that was a great idea. I think I probably would have used this weeping session as an opportunity to tell Mom everything that was going on at school with Miranda and Ella, but just as we were sitting down in front of the DVD player, the phone rang. It was the nurse from August's school calling to tell Mom that August had a stomachache and should be picked up. So much for the old movies and the mother-daughter bonding. Mom picked August up, and the moment he came home, he went straight to the bathroom and threw up. Then he went to his bed and pulled the covers over his head. Mom took his temperature, brought him some hot tea, and assumed the August's mom role again. Via's mom, who had come out for a little while, was put away. I understood, though. August was in bad shape. Neither one of us asked him why he had worn his bleeding scream costume to school instead of the Boba Fett costume Mom had made for him. If it annoyed Mom to see the costume she had worked on for 2 weeks tossed on the floor, unused, she didn't show it. Chapter 15, Trick or Treat. August said he wasn't feeling well enough to go trick-or-treating later in the afternoon, which was sad for him because I know how much he loved trick-or-treat, especially after it got dark outside. Even though I was well beyond the trick-or-treating stage myself, I usually threw on some mask or other to accompany him up and down the blocks, watching him knocking on people's doors, giddy with excitement. I knew it was the one night a year when he could truly be like every other kid. No one knew he was different under the mask. To August, that must have been absolutely amazing. At 7 o'clock that night, I knocked on his door. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he said back. He wasn't using his PlayStation or reading a comic book. He was just laying in his bed looking at the ceiling. Daisy, as always, was next to him on the bed, her head draped over his legs. The bleeding scream costume was crumpled up on the floor next to the Boba Fett costume. "How's your stomach?" I said, sitting next to him on the bed. "I'm still nauseous." "You sure you're not up for the Halloween parade?" "Positive." This surprised me. Usually August was such a trooper about his medical issues, whether it was skateboarding a few days after a surgery or sipping food through a straw when his mouth was practically bolted shut. This was a kid who's gotten more shots, taken more medicines, put up with more procedures by the age of 10 than most people would have put up with in 10 lifetimes. And he was sidelined from a little nausea? "You want to tell me what's up?" I said, sounding a bit like Mom. "No." "Is it school?" "Yes." "Teachers, schoolwork, friends?" He didn't answer. "Did someone say something?" I asked. "People always say something," he answered bitterly. I could tell he was close to crying. "Tell me what happened," I said. And he told me what happened. He had overheard some very mean things some boys were saying about him. He didn't care about what the other boys said. He expected that. But he was hurt that one of the boys was his best friend, Jack Will. I remembered his mentioning Jack a couple of times over the past few months. I remembered Mom and Dad saying he seemed like a really nice kid, saying they were glad August had already made a friend like that. "Sometimes kids are stupid," I said softly, holding his hand. I'm sure he didn't mean it. "Then why would he say it? He's been pretending to be my friend all along. Tushman probably bribed him with good grades or something. I bet you he was like, 'Hey Jack, if you make friends with the freak, you don't have to take any tests this year.'" You know that's not true, that's not true, and don't call yourself a freak. Whatever. I wish I'd never gone to school in the first place. "But I thought you were liking it." "I hate it." He was angry all of a sudden, punching his pillow. "I hate it, I hate it, I hate it." He was shrieking at the top of his lungs. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. He was hurt. He was mad. I let him have a few more minutes of his fury. Daisy started licking the tears off of his face. "Come on, Augie," I said, patting his back gently. "Why don't you put on your Jango Fett costume and..." "It's a Boba Fett costume. Why does everyone mix that up?" "Boba Fett costume," I said, trying to stay calm. I put my arm around his shoulders. "Let's just go to the parade, okay?" "If I go to the parade, Mom will think I'm feeling better and make me go to school tomorrow." "Mom would never make you go to school," I answered. "Come on, Augie, let's go. It'll be fun. I promise, and I'll let you have all my candy." He didn't argue. He got out of bed and slowly started pulling on his Boba Fett costume. I helped him adjust the straps and tighten the belt, and by the time he put his helmet on, I could tell he was feeling better. Chapter 16, Time to Think. August played up the stomachache the next day so he wouldn't have to go to school. I admit I felt a little bad for Mom, who was genuinely concerned that he had a stomach bug. But I had promised August I wouldn't tell her about the incident at school. By Sunday, he was still determined not to go back to school. "What are you planning on telling Mom and Dad?" I asked him when he told me this. They said I could quit whenever I wanted to. He said this while he was still focused on a comic book he was reading. "But you've never been the kind of kid who quits things," I said truthfully. "That's not like you." "I'm quitting." "You're gonna have to tell Mom and Dad why," I pointed out, pulling the comic book out of his hand so he'd have to look up at me while we were talking. "Then Mom will call the school and everyone will know about it." "Will Jack get in trouble?" "I would think so." "Good." I have to admit, August was surprising me more and more. He pulled another comic book off his shelf and started leafing through it. "Augie," I said, "are you really gonna let a couple of stupid kids keep you from going back to school? I know you've been enjoying it. Don't give them that power over you. Don't give them the satisfaction." "They have no idea I even heard them," he explained. "No, I know, but Via, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. I've made up my mind." "But this is crazy, Augie," I said emphatically, pulling the new comic book away from him too. "You have to go back to school. Everyone hates school sometimes. I hate school sometimes. I hate my friends sometimes. That's just life, Augie. You want to be treated normally, right? This is normal. We all have to go to school sometimes despite the fact that we have bad days, okay?" "Do people go out of their way to avoid touching you, Via?" he answered, which left me momentarily without an answer. "Yeah, right. That's what I thought. So don't compare your bad days at school to mine, okay?" "Okay, that's fair," I said. "But it's not a contest about whose days suck the most, Augie. The point is, we all have to put up with the bad days. Now, unless you want to be treated like a baby the rest of your life or like a kid with special needs, you just have to suck it up and go." He didn't say anything, but I think that last bit was getting to him. "You don't have to say a word to those kids," I continued. "August, actually, it's so cool that you know what they said, but they don't know you know what they said, you know?" "What the heck?" "You know what I mean. You don't have to talk to them ever again if you don't want. And they'll never know why, see? Or you can pretend to be friends with them, but deep down inside, you know you're not." "Is that how you are with Miranda?" he asked. "No," I answered quickly, defensively. "I never faked my feelings with Miranda." So why are you saying I should?" "I'm not. I'm just saying you shouldn't let those little jerks get to you. That's all." "Like Miranda got to you?" "Why do you keep bringing up Miranda?" I yelled impatiently. "I'm trying to talk about your friends. Please keep mine out of it." "You're not even friends with her anymore." "What does that have to do with what we're talking about?" The way August was looking at me reminded me of a doll's face. He was just staring at me blankly with his half-closed doll eyes. "She called the other day," he said finally. "What?" I was stunned. "And you didn't tell me?" "She wasn't calling you," he answered, pulling both comic books out of my hands. "She was calling me just to say hi, to see how I was doing. She didn't even know I was going to a real school now. I can't believe you hadn't even told her. She said the two of you don't hang out as much anymore, but she wanted me to know she'll always love me like a big sister." Double stunned, stung, flabbergasted. No words formed in my mouth. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said finally. "I don't know," he shrugged, opening the first comic book again. "Well, I'm telling Mom and Dad about Jack Will if you stop going to school," I answered. "Tushman will probably call you into school and make Jack and those other kids apologize to you in front of everyone, and everyone will treat you like a kid who should be going to a school for kids with special needs. Is that what you want? Because that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, just go back to school and act like nothing happened. Or if you want to confront Jack about it, fine. But either way, if you..." Fine, he interrupted. "What?" "Fine, I'll go," he yelled, not loudly. "Just stop talking about it already. Can I please have my book now? Fine, I answered. Turning to leave his room, I thought of something. Did Miranda say anything else about me? He looked up from the comic book and looked right into my eyes. She said to tell you she misses you, quote unquote. I nodded. Thanks, I said casually, too embarrassed to let him see how happy that made me feel. Okay. Who heard immerse? Victoria, put it away, Ethan. Close it, put it up. You can leave it on your desk, but we're not reading it right now. Victoria, where did you hear immerse?
I heard it when.
While you're listening to, you should be writing on the first clean page, Wonder Part 2, Chapter 13 through 16, and today's date.
I heard immerse when August was immersed to his.
We don't immerse to, we immerse ourselves in, or we are immersed in. Was August the one who was immersed in something? Aaron?
When they were talking about how Via's grand died and her mom was immersed herself to something.
She had immersed, the mom was immersed in something. What was she immersed in? They were talking about, you can answer, but on your bottom. Remember what happened. They were talking about how Via was sad about Grand's dying, and she knew her mom was too, but her mom had immersed herself into something. What was it, Ethan? Making August's costume. Why did she want August's costume to hold all of her attention? Why was she doing that? Zadie?
Because she didn't want to think about their grand's death.
She didn't want to think about Grand's death. Grand's had died right around Halloween. She didn't want to think about Grand's death, which was her mother. Grand's is Via and August's grandmother, their mom's mom. She didn't want to think about how she had died, so she immersed herself into making August's costume so that that would have all of her attention. She did not have to give attention to the fact that her mom had died. Okay, everybody close your notebooks. Okay, number 1. What happens between Via and her former best friends, Ella and Miranda? Now, when you say this, you're only saying what happened in these chapters, not what happened before these chapters. So we've heard of Ella and Miranda in the last couple sections, or parts, the last couple pieces that we've read. But we're not talking about that. They're not asking about that. They're asking what happened in the part that we read today. So you need to say what happened between them, maybe what you can say why it happened, what you think might happen next. Please put everything away except for one pencil. Everything else should be in your pencil bag. Number 2, list some of Via's new friends. List means what are their names. You need to write that in a complete sentence. So you may want to incorporate the question. Via's new friends are person, person, person. How are her new friends different from her old ones? So you need to think, these new friends are different. How are they different? What do they do that's different? How is their personality different? All of that. When you list them, you also describe them. So give them a description. So you name and give them just a short description. You can do that in one person per sentence. But don't forget to answer the part that says, how are her new friends different from her old ones? Yes, Victoria.
Like it did in the book, it
Kingston, put it away.
it said this one did violin, this one did.
Whatever it says, yes, you can do just like the name and then a short description. There are also some that are unnamed. You can still mention them. Even though they don't have a name, we still know about them, right? Number 3, why is Halloween a sad time of year for Via? What happened? Why does it make it sad? Number 4, what do Via and her mom do together on Halloween? Why do they get interrupted? So what do they want to do? What causes it to get interrupted? Number 5, what does Via convince August to do? Not in any other section, but this one specifically. And not at the end, but earlier in this part. They're asking what does Via convince August to do? Not at the end of this part, but in the middle. Number 6, summarize the last conversation that Via and August have. That's the end of this part. Regarding his return to school. So is number 5 about going back to school? No. Number 5 is about something different. There's another thing that Via convinces August to do. Because number 6 is about that last conversation regarding his return to school. Do you agree or disagree with what Via tells August? Explain your reasoning. So what that means is, in your own words, what do Via and August talk about at the end of what we read? About returning to school. That's what regarding his return to school means. Do you agree or disagree with what Via tells August? Not do you agree or disagree with August's decision, but with what Via tells him. Explain your reasoning, which means why do you agree or disagree. Number 7, what does Via learn about Miranda in the last chapter? How does she react? So she learned something about Miranda. What is that? How does she react to it? Okay, any questions about the questions? Okay. So, just like every other day, how many sentences do you need? Aaron? 2 or more. I'm not saying at least 2 anymore because then you guys think, oh, I only have to write 2. 2 or more. Most of these cannot be answered with just 2 sentences. They need more than that. I will tell you, number 3 requires there's not much to it. So if I see number 3, I know that even the most detailed answer only takes about maybe like a minute or 2. So that means if you choose number 3, go right ahead, but I know that it will not add much to that 15 minutes of effort. Do you understand what I'm saying? Means if I see number 3, that means I'm expecting like 13 minutes of effort elsewhere. Okay, so answer with 2 or more complete sentences. That means subject, predicate, capital at the beginning, and punctuation at the end. Good thoughts. Commas if they're needed, because you also must use correct grammar. Don't let grammar be what stands between you and a 100. Use correct grammar and text evidence if needed. Do not rely on text evidence to make up most of your answer, because I know what the book says. I've read this book. This is like the 5th time that I've read this book. Maybe the 6th. I know what the book says. So do I want you to answer a lot of questions with what the book says?
No.
Show me. You don't have to, don't tell me. Show me. No. I know what it says. I want to know what you think about what it says, because yes, I know exactly what the book says, but every kid is different. So even though I've taught this to 3 classes already, does that mean I know what you think about it? No. I know what Dwyer Yarrow thinks about it. I know what Esther Wang Wong thinks of it. I know what Haley Stevens thinks of it. I know what Loxley Hall thinks of it. I know what Kit Garner thinks of it. I know what Eli Kopis thinks of it. But I don't know what Kingston Johnson thinks of it. I don't know what Zadie Cantler thinks of it. I don't know what Zari Mitchell thinks of it. I don't know what Colin Stevens thinks of it. Or Ethan Parrish. Or Carla Varnado. Or Victoria Robinson. Or Aaron Doris. Or Mason Dress. Or Smith James. Or Michaela Dean. I don't know what you guys think of it, but I know what the book says. So don't rely on the text evidence to give you your answer. Don't tell me it's text evidence. I've read it 5 times. I know if it's text evidence or not. Maybe 6. And write the question with the number. Skip 1 to 2 lines. Write the answer. It needs to be well written, well thought out. Good effort. Skip 1 to 2 lines and repeat until you have given me 15 full minutes of your best work. Notice how I don't say the best work, I say your best work, because is all your best work exactly the same? No, you are all different people. So each person's best work looks different. I want to see your best work. Do you understand? Okay, when I say go, you will have 15 minutes. You will get your full time and your extra 2 minutes today. And then it'll be time to get ready to go. 15 minutes. Don't let that. We're not. Calm down, please. Go.